My name is Ann Jacobs, and I am a shareholder with Domnitz and Skemp Law Firm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And what is your involvement with 866 Our Vote?
866 Our Vote is a nationwide project put together by the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. And as a part of that, they have state affiliates. And I am part of the Legal Coordinating Committee for Wisconsin Election Protection, which is under the Lawyers Committee umbrella.
And why was this project started?
The project was started in an attempt to get accurate and full information to voters and to help them to vote across the country.
And who is involved specifically in Wisconsin?
Wisconsin, we have an incredible number of organizations that all come together under Wisconsin Election Protection, the 866 Our Vote group. It's everyone from the ACLU, NAACP, the labor 501c3 groups, including AFL-CIO, AFSCME, and a bunch of others. Some other groups, including Voces de la Frontera and other minority groups. We also work with Wisconsin Association for Justice, and the national organization works with National Council for Jewish Women, American Association for Justice, the list goes on and on.
Where do you think Wisconsin voters are at in terms of education? Do you think there's still a long ways to go for eligible voters?
Educating eligible voters on how to vote and how to register is a key part of what we do with 866 Our Vote and Wisconsin Election Protection. Wisconsin voters have had a lot of changes in this past year. We've had changes on how to register, when to register, what documents are needed. So we've had a lot of changes here in Wisconsin, and a lot of the contacts people make with us through the 866 Our Vote Wisconsin Election Protection social media program are voters with questions about how do I vote, where do I vote, and what do I need to do. So I think we're getting that information out, but part of the goal of the hotline is voters don't have to know everything. They can call and ask.
And are those the most typical questions that the hotline receives?
The most common questions are, am I registered, where do I vote, and how do I register? After those three questions, which are really the easiest to answer, there's a lot of resources for that. The next issue is, I wasn't allowed to vote for some reason. What do I need to do to go vote? And that's where our group of attorneys working on Election Day and before work really hard to answer.
Why is this year the largest push that 866 Our Vote is doing?
I think that's a combination of different factors. First of all, when we've seen a growth in the internet, social media, and the like, frankly, the awareness of 866 Our Vote has grown tremendously over the past few years. Number two, it's seen as a trusted resource. Our attorneys nationwide give important, accurate, helpful information no matter who calls. Number three, I think there's also a recognition that the right to vote means very little if people can't use that right. And so election protection has really come to be making sure people who are eligible to vote get to do that, and protecting that is as important as some of the other issues that surround voting.
Do you think there's been a push to not allow eligible voters to know their rights?
There's no question that there has been a concerted effort to prevent people from voting in the United States over the past few years. It's come in multiple forms. It's come in voter purges, voter ID legislation, whether it's billboards, whether it's in-person voter intimidation, lack of resources causing incredible lines, reduction in available hours for voting. All of these things work together to limit voting. So in order to do that, we have to both fight against those regulations, but also encourage people to be able to vote within them.
Can you go a little more in depth with the efforts of intimidation for eligible voters, in Wisconsin specifically?
Sure. A lot of what we talk about when we talk about voter intimidation is in-person voter intimidation at the polls. In 2004, here in Wisconsin, there was a concerted effort by some individuals to create a physically intimidating presence at the polls. And what I mean by that are there were people who were grabbing documents, touching poll workers, touching ballots, questioning voters individually, questioning people in line. Are you a citizen? Are you sure you have the right documents? Are you sure you have the right to vote? And those sort of activities. It was rampant, it was widespread, and it was really it was sort of a horrible thing to have happen to the orderly administration of elections in Wisconsin.
And where did this occur?
Where we documented it was primarily in the Milwaukee area. It may have gone wider than that, but in 2004, we documented it here in Milwaukee. In part as a result of that, the Government Accountability Board put into place observer rules that are currently in effect right now. The Government Accountability Board has a whole list of different rules for observers that were designed to permit observing of elections, because observing elections are a public action. We do have the right as citizens to make sure that those are going correctly and properly and the like, while still maintaining the appropriateness and the sanctity and the orderly administration of a poll site. So some of those rules included observers could not be closer than 6 feet to voters and voting activity. They could not molest people in line. They don't have the right to go up and challenge voters waiting in line. Those rules have made a tremendous difference. So in 2008 and compared to 2004, we did not see the same level of intimidation. What you do see, though, are continuing attempts at doing the same thing. It was recently documented, in Racine, where people who were convinced that there was something improper going on actually followed voters home. I see that as a form of voter intimidation. You should be able to go to the polls without having to worry about people stalking you back to your house. Now, in terms of what do I expect in 2012, I don't know. We have to be prepared for everything. It is our hope that we will see calm, orderly poll sites. That's our hope every election. But we need to be prepared for people who want to harass or otherwise intimidate voters at the polls.